listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between a fit body and positive mental health. And our big mission? It's to help 10,000 runners to develop fitter minds in the next 2 years. I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Welcome to this episode of the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we talk to Holly Ranson. And Holly shares with us her journey from a young aspiring sailor right through to being a triathlete and a cyclist, and now into an ultra distance runner. And all of those things she's done very well at. Not only that, she has also been a journalist, a dietitian, and a professional firefighter. And she's currently studying for her master's. I say it through the podcast, but really it makes me tired just thinking of all of the things that Holly fits into a day. Enjoy. Today on Fit Mind, Fit Body, I am absolutely delighted to introduce you all to Holly Ranson. You may already know her, but I'm excited to talk to her because it's been, I don't know, maybe feels like 15 years, but it can't be that long. Holly, has it been that long since I've seen you in person?
Oh, it's at least 10, Michelle, I'd say.
A long time. So Holly, I'm just so excited to talk to you, and see your lovely face. And yeah, I just think you're awesome. You're one of those people who's really easy to talk to. And so I'm, of course, very happy to be able to talk to you on the podcast and share some of your story with everyone because it's pretty inspirational, I think. So thanks for saying yes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's my very first podcast, so I'm really excited. And I've listened to so many of your podcasts and really enjoyed the trip down memory lane, listening to all the people that I used to run against at LAC, and I love it. So I'm pretty happy to be here.
I would never have guessed that it would be your first podcast. Just because of who you are and like your background and the little bits I know. I'm like, oh, I'm sure Holly's been on a podcast or two.
No, never. This is the very first one.
You're a podcast virgin, I suppose. I can say that.
Not listening to them, though. I listen to podcasts every day. I love them.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's awesome. All right. So there will be some people who listen to the podcast who may not have met you. So let's start from, the very beginning. Where'd you grow up, Holly?
Well, I grew up in Launceston, in Trevellyn, to be specific.
Yeah.
And I was there until I was 17, and then I moved to Queensland to pursue my dream of sailing in the Olympics.
Sailing?
Yeah, sailing. But that only lasted a year before I was back in Tassie, spent another few years there, and then moved over to Adelaide for a few years, followed by the Gold Coast, Brisbane, and then up to Darwin, and now I'm back in South Australia.
So you just like kind of moving around, well, generally the East Coast and a bit north, I suppose. You wouldn't say Darwin is East Coast at all, or actually you wouldn't say Adelaide is either. So just kind
moving
of
around
eastern side of Australia, if you were to put a line between Adelaide and Darwin.
That's it. I've got to go and live in Western Australia so I can complete the set, although I haven't lived in Victoria either, but I have no desire to do that.
You're very close to Victoria. Whether you're in Tasmania or South Australia, you kind of feel
that's true. We're only an hour and a half, about half an hour from the border of Victoria and an hour and a half from Mildura, which is the first city you come to in Victoria.
I did not know. I didn't know it was that close. No, there you go, to Mildura, because I've got family there. Anyway,
there you go.
So let's go all the way back to Trevellyn. What was school like for you when it came to sport?
I wasn't a sporty kid at school. I don't know if you can believe that. I sailed all through my youth. So I started when I was about 6 and sailed up until I was 18. But I always enjoyed sport, and I did your team sport. Like I went to Scotch Oakburn and we had to do sport at school. So I did netball and soccer. And that was pretty much it. I didn't run. I never grew up doing any kind of endurance sport at all.
Wow. Do you remember what you thought when you had to run? Because I assume just like most schools at Scotch Oakburn, it was like you have to go in the cross country and you have to run in the carnival or whatever we call them, the sports carnival.
Yeah, I didn't mind it too much, especially the cross country. I was okay, nothing special. I didn't like athletics at all.
Oh.
But yeah, it was just one of those things you had to do, I suppose.
For your sailing, like when you were younger, did you do anything to stay fit? Because sailing, that's more of a summer thing, especially in Tasmania.
Yeah, it is. When I got really serious about it when I was a teenager, I did start to do a bit of gym work,
Mhm.
and I built what they call a hiking bench, which simulates the way that you keep a dinghy flat is to lean your body out. So it requires a lot of core strength and a lot of quad strength.
Oh, wow.
And you can build a sort of simulator that you can put in your lounge room. And I would just sit on that and watch the TV and hike out.
That sounds like it would have been very interesting when people were like delivering pizzas and stuff.
Yes. What is that thing? But yeah, I think like people who have any kind of exercise equipment in their house, it gets used for a few weeks and then it goes into the storeroom and never gets brought out again.
Yeah, that's so sad. They all go to a place to die, don't they?
They do.
Home exercise equipment.
Absolutely.
A bit like socks and pens and scissors and things. But anyway, although it's not, we want those, we don't necessarily want the home exercise equipment. Like we
Not after the
want
first little bit.
yeah,
No.
exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, so do you have siblings? I don't know if you have siblings.
Yeah, I just have one younger sister who's 2 years younger than me.
And is she very sporty?
No, she was a dancer when we were growing up. So she was into ballet and jazz and all those different types of dancing. And she actually went to the Houston Ballet. She was in the secondary company, you know, the young dancers that are kind of aspiring to be in the professional company. But unfortunately, she got injured and never made it as a dancer. So
that's fascinating, though, that both of you have, you know, pursued some sort of physical endeavor. It doesn't, you know, fitness into, I don't know, what do we call it? Physical endeavor, like a professional, you know, in some kind of sport, I suppose.
It really is.
Ballet
And
sport, I suppose.
yeah, I don't know, activity, it's creative, artsy.
Very physical.
Yeah, and our cousins, some of our cousins are really into sport as well, but all really different things. I've got one cousin who is a power lifter, one who is one of Australia's highest ranking parkour athletes, and another one who's into kickboxing. So yeah.
Wow, I wonder where that comes from in your family. That's really interesting.
It's really odd.
What about your parents? Did they like demonstrate to you a desire to do more than, you know, when I was growing up, your parents, if they did anything that was physical, it might be, well, my dad played golf a little bit and occasionally played cricket, but not, you know, that was about it. And I don't think mum did anything apart. She was always physical, but she didn't do anything organized physical or go out for a run just for the sake of it. What about your parents?
Yeah, no, mum always has walked with her friends as her social outings, but never anything more than that since I remember. She did used to sail before I was born. She used to sail with dad, and dad's always been a sailor. He would sail a little bit when I was sailing, but usually he was so busy doing the organizing side of things that he didn't sail very much, but he was a very keen and talented sailor before I was born. He went to World Championships and had a second at the World Championships. So that's who I took after.
Do you still do any sailing now?
I do actually. I didn't do it for about 10 years. And then when I moved to Darwin, I saw boats out on the water. And in Darwin, you really want to get into the water because it's so hot, but you can't because of the crocodiles and the jellyfish. So sailing seemed like the next best option. And I bought myself a secondhand boat and got back into it. And now I've brought the boat down here to South Australia and still sail pretty much every weekend in the summer.
So for those who are playing at home and understand, what kind of boat is it?
It's called a laser. So it's a 14-foot long fiberglass dinghy. It's just sailed by one person and it has only one sail. It's a very simple boat to sail. It's called a one design because all the boats are exactly the same. So it really comes down to the sailor's ability. And it's what they sail in the Olympics. So they have different size of sail, a bigger one for the men and a slightly smaller one for the women.
Oh, That's so cool. Well, my little tiny sailing story was I lived in Sydney during the Olympics, and we had tickets to go to see the sailing, and the weather was really bad, and so we didn't get. So we just got a little tour on the boat. They still put you on the boat to go and have the tour around the harbour. So we did that. So the weather wasn't so bad. We couldn't do the tour, but it was bad enough that we couldn't be watching the sailing. And the next day when the sailing came on, Australia won gold.
Oh, wow. And you missed it.
Yeah,
that sucks.
We're like, no. Anyway, happy, but no. Anyway, that's my sailing story.
That's a good story.
Yeah, any kind of competitive sailing anyway. I love the water. That's very cool that you do that. So when you left school, what did you do? I mean, obviously you talked about sailing and exploring the professional side of that. Was that the first thing that you did when you left year 12?
Well, I actually did that in year 12. So I was in such a hurry to get going and get started with things. Yep. I went up to Queensland and I finished my schooling by distance education.
Oh, wow.
So I had 5 subjects, I think, through 5 different colleges in Tassie. So all around Tassie, they do this open learning thing. And so I studied on my own and finished on my own while I was sailing and working by myself in Queensland.
Wow. And how was that? What was that like to go, like, because you would have been 17, did you say? So
it was scary being out of home for the first time and having to do so much on my own, organise the sailing, drive myself to different regattas, tow the trailer, and it was stressful because I was trying to study as well as work to earn a living, and also trying to be on the water and in the gym and doing all the things I needed to do for sport as well. So it was a big year, and that's probably why it didn't pan out in the end.
Because you were everything. You were being your own parent, and we all know what it's like to drive in a new place, let alone like a big city when you come from a smaller place, and you put a trailer on the back.
Yeah, and I was on my P's. I think I'd only just got my license, so it was a bit crazy.
Well, that was very brave, anyway, I think.
Yeah, I guess it did set me up. It taught me a lot of life lessons and a lot of resilience that has carried through.
Yeah. So what did you do when you came back to Tasmania, when you were 18?
Well, initially I had a job at the supermarket working in the deli, and that was going to be my plan to save up and then maybe go back to Queensland. I was planning to study a degree in journalism at UQ, actually. But then I ended up getting a cadetship at the Examiner. So instead of going to study journalism, I basically did an apprenticeship there.
Wow. Do they still do cadetships in journalism?
I don't know. I absolutely don't know.
Yeah. I just wondered, just because it seems like a lot of those kind of, where you learn on the job have gone by the wayside a bit, unless you're in a trade or something like that, like
I don't know. It maybe has gone.
I didn't know. So you started a cadetship in the local paper. For those of you who don't know, the Examiner is a local paper here.
It is.
But yeah, how was that? How long did you complete that? I don't know.
Yeah, I did. I think I stayed for nearly 4 years or 3 years. And I did a bit of writing. I did the column for the running and the sailing and bits and pieces, and was involved as the media officer for the Three Peaks race as well, which is the sailing and running race, which I think has been mentioned on your podcast before.
It has. It's one of my favorite. From my starting running career, my younger running career, it was one of my favorite events. I did that 3 or 4 times. I loved it. It was so good.
It's an amazing race.
Yeah, so good. Oh, so you're doing journalism. Were you doing any kind of sport on the side then?
That's when I started to get into endurance sport, actually. I think I gave up sailing because I was doing a lot of shift work and working on the weekends, and that's when you sail. It's not that much fun to go out in the middle of the week by yourself. So, I guess I was paying my own way by that stage, and boats are not cheap. So, I think, how did I get into it? I think I probably started into running through Jono.
Yeah.
Claridge, previous
Yep.
guest on your
Yep.
podcast. And then we happened to be living next door to Dave Herbig, and he then dragged me into triathlon essentially.
See, I
So
know him too.
yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
was that was where it started. I think triathlon started about the same time as my journalist career.
Oh, wow. And did you find, like, we often talk on the podcast when people stay studying and running, because this is the podcast about running, but any kind of sporting endeavor really, but that when you're doing that physical exercise, it actually helps in your study. And I imagine, to me, journalism feels a bit like you're just always studying, because you're always learning about something new, and then you're having to digest it and through your brain, your mind, and then it comes out in the pen or typewriter or computer. So you're having to read information and then interpret it for other people, or go into a situation and interpreting it for other people to put it in a written form, right? So that feels a bit like school. So do you feel like your running and your triathlon training things supported that? Because I suppose it's using your mind to try and a really long way around to ask that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always found that. And I think that's been one of the things that's really kept me in sport, is that it makes me focus so much better. And I remember when I was working at the Examiner, I would leave the office at lunchtime and I would run out to the tail race and run back and have a quick bite to eat and a shower, and then go back to my desk. And you just feel so refreshed and like you can really focus and concentrate again. Whereas when you sit in the office all day or study all day or whatever you're doing, staring at the computer screen for so many hours, there's only so long you can concentrate. And yeah, exercising is such a good way to break it up and get that blood flowing back to the brain, I think.
Yeah, totally. I love that. All right, so you started triathlon. Tell me a bit about your triathlon story.
Like most things, I probably went from 0 to 100 in the first week. I just got hooked on it like most people do, and especially in Launceston, the triathlon community is just so beautiful, and same as the running community. People are so supportive. There's always someone to train with to help you out. And I just started doing the little sprint distance events, as you do with the Launceston Triathlon Club, and then progressed. I think I did the Olympic distance at Bridport a few times, and then set my sights on some longer things, and ended up going to the ITU Long Course World Championships in Las Vegas in 2011. And to get there, I did a lot of fundraising. So I called on all those supportive people to come to trivia nights and auctions and whatever else, and actually raised the money to get there. So yeah, that was probably the peak of my triathlon career in Tassie, and then moved to Adelaide and continued on, and actually got my professional license in about 2013. So did a couple of years racing as a pro on the half Ironman circuit around Australia. Which was amazing. I got a couple of podiums, but I ended up suffering from a lot of injuries, including a few stress fractures, which really just took a toll and took so long to recover from, that put that on the back burner and moved out of triathlon from then.
How did you find, well, how do you find, you've always been competing, it probably seems like a silly question, but and again on the podcast we talk about this a lot, mostly because this is therapy for me. So I get really quite nervous even before events, which is silly because I've done loads of them, running events. But then when I think about you guys who have got so much more on the line, you've trained, like seriously trained, not just what the weekend warriors do so much. And then you said professional, so you're training for, and you're racing for a team and for for an organization, a group, or whatever you call it, and then at other levels you're racing for your state or your country or your whatever. How do you deal with all that kind of pressure? How does that work?
You still get nervous. Well, I do anyway. And I think it's a lot the pressure you put on yourself, because it's not coming from anywhere else, really. Even when you are racing for a team or a sponsor, usually they're pretty cool with things. You know, they just want you to go in there and do your best. And I think sponsorship these days is a lot more about who you are and what how you present yourself in person and on social media than it is actually about your race results.
I'm trying, is it good or bad? I'm like, hold on.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of social media, so I find it quite difficult in that sense. But yeah, I don't know. I still get really nervous and get kind of snappy and you know, push away the people that are trying to help me in those moments. But I think the best way that I know to cope with it is just to reflect on previous events that have gone well and think there is no reason that this event should go badly because you have a history of X amount of events that have gone well. You know you can do this. You put in the training. You just have to go there and see what happens. And in the end, if you don't do well in this event, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't really matter.
That's a nice way to think about it. If only it worked. But I'm sure. All right. So you get to the end of for the time being your triathlon on stuff. What does Holly do next? What does Holly do?
Well, I thought I would just do sport for fun while I finished uni and did whatever, because I was trying to balance professional triathlon with a full-time uni degree, and I was working 2 or 3 jobs at the same time.
You were.
Yeah, this is a bit of a theme in my life. And all of those jobs were, I was instructing fitness classes and aqua aerobics and all that sort of stuff. So it was very physical. So I was exhausted all of the time. And I was commuting by bike and just, so active, doing far too much. So I thought I would just lay off, finish my uni degree, focus on that. And then who knows what, you know, when I finished study, maybe I could pick something up again. But I happened to fall in with the wrong crowd, as in, and when I say that, it was some elite female cyclists in Adelaide, and they dragged me into the fold and forced me to start racing as a elite cyclist.
Horrible people. Who do we report them to?
I know. Well, they are, Michelle, because I stopped running from that point on.
Oh, they are horrible, like I said.
Yeah.
There must be some people who can deal with that. Unbelievable.
So I went cycling. I probably did 4 or 5 years, where I started off really in the state circuit in South Australia, and then went into the National Road Series and did that as an individual for a year or so, and then progressed into some teams and then to some better known teams, and then stepped back just doing state stuff in Queensland. They had a pretty good road series in Queensland as well. But then when I moved to Darwin, it wasn't really practical to continue on with cycling from there. So that was the end of that.
So what were you studying for a start?
I studied nutrition and dietetics.
Yep. So you finished that in Adelaide or Queensland or between or whatever?
Yeah, I did 2 years in Adelaide, and then I finished it up with 2 years in Queensland.
Okay. It does seem strange to me that most people either start as swimmers or runners, then go to triathlon kind of thing. You seem to have gone like, I don't know, sailing, running, triathlon, or maybe it was sort of triathlon, but then kind of, and then cycling.
Yes, like, it's a very strange evolution. Yes.
This feels a bit. And now I know that you're running now, though. Again,
yes.
It's running at the end. Don't want to
it's gone
break
back
it to
and
anybody.
Forwards. Yeah, I think it depends on, whenever I get injured or something, I move to a different sport. And when I get injured doing that, I move back to a different sport.
I suppose you've got lots of different sports you're good at. So that, mind you, have you done anything swimming wise?
No, not really.
Individual swimming? I'm surprised. That's to come, I'm sure.
I don't think so. I really don't enjoy swimming. I only ever did it because you needed to do that to get to the bike.
Duathlon?
Yeah, people have proposed that to me. Maybe in the future.
You don't have to get wet. Unless it rains, of course. I suppose I was thinking about it when you were talking about all the pressures of all the things that you were doing while you were also studying. At least if you move from a multi-sport to a single sport that is only one sport you're doing.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And that should feel like less work, shouldn't it? But I think when you focus on that one sport, you probably do as much time as you would devote to 3 separate sports, but all in the one, plus probably a bit of gym work and that sort of thing on the side to support that sport.
And I think with cycling too, there's all the extra bits and gear and stuff that come with it. So that it's not, you can't just put on your shoes and go for a run. A little bit like swimming, it's pretty hard unless you've got your own pool to say, I'm just going to go for a swim, for most people anyway. They have to get in the car or whatever, find a way to get to the pool or to the beach or wherever. So yeah, it's interesting. So that all that takes time too, doesn't it? Not to mention the pressure of you said you were doing elite cycling. So that
yes, which was pretty time consuming. You need to be riding 500 k's a week roughly to compete at that level. So yeah, it's still pretty time consuming.
When you look back, what's your favorite time with your cycling?
Oh, when I was living in Adelaide, the cycling in Adelaide is second to none. It's just amazing. The hills and the access that you have. If you live anywhere near the city, it's 15 minutes ride and you are out in these beautiful hills, just so scenic, so many different ways to go. You can lose yourself out there for a whole day and the hours just roll by so quickly. It's not a chore doing it that way. Whereas sometimes, I've also cycled when I've lived in Brisbane and, you spend so long trying to get out of the city, fighting with all the traffic, the smells, the noises, the traffic lights. It's just not as pleasant. But in the Adelaide Hills, just loved it.
That's gorgeous. Oh, you make me want to get my bike out.
Do it. It's the same in Tassie. It's this beautiful riding in Tassie too, just a little bit chilly in winter.
Yes, it is a little chilly in winter. I agree.
It is.
All right, so you go from from Queensland over to Darwin. What made you go to Darwin? What got you over there?
So it's an interesting story. When I was finishing up uni, we were getting told by the lecturers that none of you will ever get a job in dietetics because there are hundreds of you graduates and there's only a few jobs. So you should probably apply for any job you could possibly do. Which is exactly what you want to hear when you've just spent 40 grand on your HECS debt and 4 years of your life getting a degree. So I did my final placement for my degree up in Darwin and I just loved Darwin. I met some great people. I loved the weather. And I thought, well, I'll have a look to see if there's any jobs on the go here. And I was looking for dietitian jobs in the government, but because I was on the government website, the job for the fireys popped up. So I applied to become a full-time firefighter. And by the time I'd graduated from uni, and I actually got a job straight away in private practice in Brisbane, in a really reputable private practice that services a lot of the big sporting teams up there, which was exactly what I wanted to do. Yeah. But then I got offered the job in the fireys and I thought, gee, this is probably an exciting opportunity that I can't really turn down. So I worked for 6 months as a dietitian and then I left and moved to Darwin.
No way. You became a firefighter?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't see that on Strava at all. I don't know. So tell me what that was like. My gosh.
Oh, different. I started, I was in a squad of 24 recruits, which was the first time they'd ever done an intake of 24. They usually do 12. So we were a bit of a guinea pig squad and things didn't go very smoothly for our 6-month recruit course. It was a bit of an adventure, but yeah, such an adjusting to the heat and humidity and it was pretty good fun. I met some great people and we spent I think 5 months on recruit course and then we went on shift. So we were working, you work 2 day shifts and then 2 night shifts and then you have 4 days off. So it's a pretty good lifestyle really.
Yeah. And how long did you do that for?
Nearly 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're little. Just imagining you throwing someone over your shoulder, taking them out of a burning building. How does that work?
I'm sure a lot of my colleagues in the fire service had that worry as well, but I'm pretty strong for my size.
I imagine you're very strong, actually. Yeah, you say
and
that.
in terms of all the fitness stuff we did on recruit course, I turned out to be one of the stronger people in most of the things and be able to beat most of the guys, which was pretty cool.
Yes, go girls, girl power. They have, like, I feel like I've heard on the radio, different forces, including firefighters, have some sort of sporting competitions and things. Whether it's, I don't know, is forces the right word? I don't know if that's the right word, but like the police and the fireys and the paramedics maybe, or whatever, all have some kind of sporting competition amongst each other.
Yes, they do. They have the police, fire, and emergency services games, or whatever it's called. I never ended up going. I think right in the middle of when I was working for the fire service, it was COVID, and so it was cancelled. And then, I think there was meant to be one in Wollongong last year, but it didn't end up making it. So it was on my agenda to do, but got plenty of other competitions to do, so it's all right.
So you're in Darwin, doing quite a physical job, and a job that I believe requires you to stay quite fit. What did you do in your sporting world? So you're no longer having to study. Maybe you were studying. What were you doing?
So you'll probably laugh at this, but because you have so much time off in the fireys, most people get a second job. So I got a job as a lifeguard. So I was working, a bit on my days off as a casual lifeguard. And then I also decided to study a graduate diploma in psychology. So I was doing that by distance education.
Because you were bored.
Yeah, exactly. I dabbled in triathlon again for a season. I did a season of the sprint distance events with the club up there. What else did I do? I did a bit of everything, to be honest. I did some adventure racing. I did a bit of mountain biking, did a bit of cycling, and a little bit of running. I went down to Alice Springs twice and did trail runs in Alice Springs. So that was pretty cool.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Do people ever say, Holly, do you know how to stay still?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. I thought they might. Yeah. All right. Are you still a firefighter?
I am. So now I'm an on-call firefighter. So in the town where I live now, they don't have full-time firefighters, but they do have a station for the Metropolitan Fire Service, but all of the firefighters there are on call. So we go once a week for training, and then we just get paged if there's a job, and if we're free, we turn up.
So a bit like SES, I suppose, how I imagine SES.
Yes, except for we get paid and the SES doesn't.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good for you, because you've done a lot of work over the years, most of your life, where you've, especially when you're training for teams and different events and sports and stuff, where you don't get paid. So it's kind of nice.
Exactly. It is good. It's very nice.
So why did you leave Darwin? What happened?
Well, if you want the honest answer, my partner and I both lost our jobs because we didn't want to have the COVID vaccination.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's very honest of you.
Yeah.
Wow, this is a whole thing. I mean, I don't want to get super controversial, but there's a whole thing in the news. Someone put that up. Actually, might have been on Facebook, but it was referring to an article where someone had lost their job during COVID, and then they'd taken whatever agency or whoever they worked for to court, and they were getting their job or being reinstated and getting paid back pay and all that kind of stuff. So
so there was 9 of us in the fire service that lost our jobs, and 2 of them have been reinstated with back pay. So
there you go. So
we're just waiting to see what happens, but
So you lost your job.
Yeah.
When was that?
December last year.
And you decided to leave Darwin.
Yeah, so they had a statewide mandate. So basically you couldn't work at all in the NT if you didn't have the vaccination. So we didn't really have a choice. I mean, we could have stayed around and lived on our savings for a while, but how long, we didn't know if it was going to go on forever. We felt like we had no choice, and came down to South Australia, to my partner's hometown, and we thought we'd stay here for a bit and figure out where to go from here, and we just have never left.
You haven't left? Well, at least yet. That sounds like it was, about a year ago then?
Exactly, yeah. So actually we left on my birthday last year, which was this Saturday just gone. So we've just
happy birthday,
celebrated. Thank you. Yeah, so it's basically 12 months to the day that we arrived here, which is pretty wild to think of everything that's happened in the past year.
I think the last 2 years with COVID and everything, it has been very surreal for many people. Like lots of stuff has happened, different things. It's been like previous. It's weird. It feels like we rolled on from the Trump era and then we rolled into this kind of COVID thing, which kind of overlapped, I know.
And it's been like, one crazy thing after another. Like when you take into account the bushfires and then COVID and now the floods, which are about to impact us here as well.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah. It's crazy.
So what are you doing in your partner's hometown, apart from being an on-call firefighter?
Apart from being an on-call firefighter, I've actually gone back to using my dietetics degree.
What?
Yeah. So I've got two jobs. Well, I'm running my own business. So I started this up while we were in Darwin on the side, basically just to see sports people mainly.
Yeah.
And it's evolved more into a general sort of dietetic practice because there's no other private practice dietitians in this area. So I'm getting all the referrals from the local GPs. And then I do 3 days a week in the next town along, in basically working in community health.
So people come to you, like they're in person, appointments.
Yeah, a bit of a combination. I'd say in my private practice, it's 95% in person and a little bit of telehealth. And then in my job in community health, we service a really large area of South Australia, most of Southeast and Eastern South Australia. So I do a lot of phone consults with older people and then some telehealth with people that have the capacity to be able to do that.
Wow. That's just, look at that. You've got a little professional career going on and then your little professional firefighting as well. And
it's a bit too much going on.
Still fit in running and and doing well at that. So what does that side of your life look like? We've worked out what you're doing professionally.
Yeah, the running.
What are you doing when you're in your sports side?
Well, I've got a bit of an ambition to sort of make a go of ultra running and trail running now.
Why is that, Holly?
Well, as you know, I've always wanted to be a professional athlete and it's just never really happened, or not to the level where you're just basically doing the sport and not anything else really. And I just have kind of figured out in the last year or two that I'm reasonably good at this trail ultra running thing, and having seen that around the world there's a lot of people becoming professionals in their 40s and even 50s. I feel like maybe this is the last frontier that I can conquer at my advanced age of 34.
Oh, you're so old. Stop it.
My oldest professional athlete.
My oldest child is about to turn 31. So
really? There you go.
You make me feel so old.
Yeah. You're not old.
Yeah, thank you. That's why I said that. I wanted you to tell me that.
You're welcome.
So the idea is that you're going to, or that you would really like to explore where ultra trail running can take you in the form of becoming professional at it.
Well, hopefully, or at least partially supported. I'd really like to travel a bit and do it. And obviously that's pretty expensive and requires a lot of time off work. So, I don't know what the possibilities are, but I feel like it's worthwhile exploring.
It's interesting because I think the model for how people make money now in these areas, it's changing. Like, when you first started, which actually in the scheme of things wasn't that long ago, even when you were 17, really wasn't, half your life ago, perhaps, or less. It was, you got sponsored by, a company or a business or whatever, or maybe you got some grant money from the government, that kind of thing. But these days, it's even, the ability for the internet even to be able to give you outlets to finance what you're doing while still in some way practicing it, whether it's coaching or some other kind of thing, or creating information products. And when you cross, because what are you? You're a journalist, a firefighter, a dietitian, and you're only early 30s, mid-30s. Oh my gosh, so much that you could spin those things together and create something pretty crazy, if you wanted to, because that's the world that we live in, which I think is awesome, with the internet. And maybe that's half the problem. There's so many opportunities.
I I think so. It's really hard to narrow down what do you actually want to do. And for me to focus on one thing, because obviously I like to do lots of different things all at the same time. So if I actually sat down and concentrated on one thing, I probably could make a go of it.
You probably could.
Yeah.
But you might be bored.
Probably.
If you were just doing one thing. Okay, so what does your training look like now? Like, do you have like big goals that you put out there and you think I need to run X kilometers each week or whatever? Do you work like that? Is that how you?
Yeah, a little bit. So I'm just about to sit down and plan out what races I want to do next year.
Yeah.
But basically, I've sort of been going from one event to the next this year. Been a bit spontaneous, I would say. I just find things and say, oh, I want to do that. That looks good. And then I'll build up my own training plan working towards that. So just most recently, I've done a backyard ultra, my first one. And my goal in leading up to that was to consistently be running 100 Ks a week. And I managed that for 5 weeks before the event. So that was training for that.
So we can talk a bit about that event. So that event, tell me the name of that one.
The name, it's very aptly named, Hysterical Carnage Backyard Ultra in Loxton, South Australia.
And so what was your goal going into that? What did you want to achieve?
Well, if I'm honest, my goal was to win it because no female in Australia has ever won one before. So I would love to put my name down in the record books as the first Australian woman to win a backyard ultra.
That would be amazing. How many of them are, like, I didn't, as we talked before, I didn't even know what they were until people kept coming on my podcast from Western Australia talking about them.
Yeah, no, I only came to the realization that they existed about 12 months ago myself. There's about a dozen in Australia now. It's really growing quickly, and I think it's probably going to be the next big thing because it's so inclusive. People can do it no matter what level of running they have. And it's such an atmosphere at the start finish line. It's just like a little village, this community of people that love running. And I really think it's going to be the big up and coming thing.
And I was involved in a couple of track ultras here years ago. And so they were kind of fun, but a little bit boring when you're just doing 400 meter. There's something a little bit more exciting about a 6.7 or whatever it is, which is a bit more varied.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of them have a daytime loop and a nighttime loop. So they might have a trail loop in the day and then they have something simpler at night just for the runner's safety. So that's a good idea. So
how did this race unfold for you? This first ever one that you've attempted, how did that go?
Yeah, so it was a long time in the planning, obviously a lot of training, but also in the preparation for it. I watched a lot of videos on backyard ultras, listened to a lot of podcasts and got lots of ideas, and we spent a lot of money buying all the equipment that we thought we would need. And we finally got to the start line. It's set in a caravan park, so it's really convenient. You've got the amenities block just adjacent to the start finish line. You set up your individual gazebos. You have your whole setup there with like a camp bed or a chair, or we had fans, we had everything on the go. And it started on a Friday morning at 10 a.m. It was quite a hot day, sunny and hot, and that actually changed the course quite a bit from the original because we're having such a high river level with the Murray River here. It's actually flooded a lot of what was the original course. So the course starts with what they call the Stairway to Heaven, which is 150 stairs up to the top of a cliff. And then you run around a bit on the top of the cliff, and then you come down a hill and you do some more trail, and you go through this thing called a historical village, which is like a little replica of how the town would have looked 100 years ago. It's pretty cute. It's pretty cool. And then you run back to the start line, and you just do that over and over again. So my plan was to come in on about 44 minutes of each each lap. So that's not a particularly fast pace. That's about 6-minute 40 Ks. So the strategy is that you walk up all the hills and then you jog in between. And one of the challenges, I guess, is to stay very steady at that pace, because it's so much easier to run faster than that, especially at the start when you're feeling fresh. But it will catch up with you in the end if you go too hard. So I was really consistent on that pace until we had a thunderstorm at about lap 25, where the course kind of flash flooded. Bit of swift water going on, running through like knee-deep water, lightning.
We're not supposed to drive through floods?
Yep, I was thinking that if it's flooded, forget it. But no, the race had to go on, and there was only about 8 of us left by that stage, and then we saw a couple more drop out. I was really lucky because being essentially a home event, it's only half an hour from where I'm living now. So we had so many people come over and support, cheer, bring signs, and they were so great. And then, got down to the final 5, and we reached lap 30, and we were sort of running back to the finish line in another thunderstorm with lightning cracking all around us, and pouring rain, whatever else. And they said, look, we're going to postpone the race for an hour and then see what happens. And then somehow or other, about 10 minutes later, the race director was on the PA saying, it's not safe for the runners to go out again. We've decided to cancel the race from here. And that was it.
Wow. Not that I'm a big watcher of backyard ultras or front yard ultras, apart from the fact that I know that they exist now. But do they cancel very many of them? Is that a common thing?
That's the first one in Australia. I don't know about the world, but it's certainly the first one in Australia ever to be cancelled.
Wow. But you were in the top 5.
Yeah, I was, which is great. And everyone says you ran 200 Ks, like what an amazing achievement. And you were alongside some of Australia's best backyard ultra runners. And yes, apparently I am the 3rd female in Australia to ever run 30 laps on their first backyard ultra. But I guess there's still a level of disappointment for me because I don't know how far I could have gone, and I'm really confident that I could have gone quite a bit further.
How did you feel at the end? Like, I don't mean that it was cancelled. How did your body feel after that 200?
It's funny. I went through a really tough patch from about lap 25 or 26 to about 28. I was starting to get a bit of ITB pain in my knee, really tight hamstrings and sore knees. And then one of the girls who had been competing in the race, who's a Bowen therapist, she actually came back to the race site and decided to be my personal masseur in between each lap. I know, isn't this amazing? And she completely cured me of my ITB pain. I don't know how she did it. It was like magic. But on lap 29, so this is coming up to run, we'd been running, that's 180, 190 Ks. I ran a 41-minute lap, and I felt like it was lap 1.
Wow.
So I was actually feeling so good when they called off, and that's, I guess, probably one of the reasons I was so disappointed.
Well, when is the next one that you're
well, they are, because there are a number of them in Australia now. I think the next one's probably in February, but I haven't 100% decided which one I'm going to do yet. There's apparently a Masters one in June, which is not Masters for old people, but Masters for, you can only qualify if you've run 24 laps before, and you get a free entry if you've run more than 35. So it's supposed to be a bit of a best of the best sort of thing.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and get an entry into that one, I think.
Oh, awesome. Well, that will be exciting.
Yeah.
You let us know how you go.
Yeah, I'll probably have to race Phil Gore.
Oh, yes, who has been on the podcast.
Yes.
I think everybody I've spoken to from Western Australia is a backyard ultra runner.
Well, several of them came over. There was quite a crowd of them at this race that I did in Loxton. I think that's probably where the 2 original ones in Australia were held, and I think so they've been doing it for a few more years than everybody else, maybe.
Yeah, so it's got a bit of an established over there, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It's really fascinating. So what other kind of races when you come to ultra trail? So you just a long distance in the trail, because not just backyard ultras.
No, that's right. I want to try all the different formats. I do want to try one of those track ones that you were mentioning.
Yeah.
I think it will be super boring, but I'd like to see, if I could do something a little bit faster. So I'll probably try a 12 or 24-hour track race in the next year or so. But also point-to-point ultras. So I just did my first 100K a few months ago. And I just love that. That was amazing. So probably 100Ks. I might even go up to 100 miles potentially in the next year or two. But that's probably it for now. Maybe one day I'll look at doing those insane 200-mile ridiculous races. But for the moment, I like to focus on, about 100Ks. I think that's a good distance.
Oh, that's exciting. So what will your training look like for that kind of distance?
So I'll go back up to trying to get into 100Ks of running a week. So that would probably look like, I probably have a long run on the weekend of about 30Ks, 30 to 35. And I have 2 speed runs during the week. So interval training, whether that's sort of longer, like 4 to 5K intervals, or I'll do some shorter stuff as well with like 30-second or a minute hard efforts. And then, some other easy runs. We don't have any hills here in the town where I live, which is really unfortunate.
That's the flooding. That's why you're a bit prone to the flooding, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And all the trails that, well, not that we have many trails here, but the trails that do exist are all underwater now. So we'll try to probably go down to Adelaide a lot more regularly and try and run on some of the trails there, just to get a bit of elevation and a bit of trail stuff, because you really sort of miss the technical aspect of trail running when you're on the road all the time. So we'll try and go down every fortnight or so and do the long runs in the hills. And then I probably keep in 2 to 3 bike sessions a week. So that's sort of like base fitness without putting the impact on my body so much. And then I'll do 2 gym sessions a week. So that's leading up to a race. It would be really specific running strength and core strength stuff. So single leg squats and bridges, lots of glute work, anything that I think is just going to work my stabilizer muscles and help me keep my form strong for long races.
And that's why you're a really good athlete. I'm thinking, feeling really tired. Just thinking.
I think at the most it probably works out to be about 16 hours of training a week. So it's a fair bit when you're working and all that sort of stuff. It's like before work and after work and on the weekends.
How do you fit it in? Like, how do you fit that in when you're now, like, as you said, you've got a job and a half?
Well, I've got my own business, then 2 other jobs, and I'm also doing a master's degree.
Holly.
So I don't do much social stuff other than, like, if I'm cycling, I'll cycle with a bunch of people that we
Lucky
can
you've got a partner. You've got someone else you can talk to.
So I try and drag him out training with me, because otherwise I'd never see him. I don't really do things like watching TV. I do a little bit of reading, but a lot of that is probably uni reading, like not fun reading. And I really multitask, which is probably not the most productive way to do things, but any little piece of time I can use to do something is doing something. Like, I might be listening to a podcast while I'm cooking, but it would be a podcast on dietetics, so I'm doing my CPD while I'm cooking, or, just, doubling up with everything.
Yeah, where you can.
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to ask you what you do for fun.
Sport? Does that count?
Of course, if you're doing it for fun. Like, I'm reading a book at the moment, weirdly, called Footnotes.
Okay.
It's really good. Like, it's about running. But he's an English professor in a university in England somewhere. But it's all about running and running for pleasure. Or what he was talking about it, that rather than always running either to lose weight or running as exercise, where it becomes almost a job in itself. but instead have at least some of your runs where they're just for fun, really. And it's like for leisure. People who don't run can't even understand what do you mean running for leisure? We run to catch the bus or we run, it's like, but it's an interesting concept to play with in your head, how do you, and for me, it'd probably be my runs that were for fun are the traily type of runs, because I just spend time smelling the roses, really, and walk the hills and look at the view and maybe take my phone out and take a photo or whatever. But it's that kind of, it's not it's not really about the destination, but more about the journey as you're doing it. So running, it's a long way around saying definitely that your running can be fun, or not just running, but other things that you do, your sport. But do you do anything else for fun? It's not
that's not
related?
sport. Occasionally I hang out with friends, and now that I've lived in so many places around Australia, I have friends everywhere, so we FaceTime and nice. Chat, and I don't know. That's pretty much it.
That's okay. You obviously it's obviously a big part of you, like that, being able to move and just keep doing things and achieving. You're very driven. Actually, that's the word I'm looking for. You're obviously very self-driven.
It can be to my detriment. I think, we don't really get taught how to listen to our bodies and slow down and rest and do those things like smelling the roses. And I'm starting to realize more and more now as I get older, when I do need to take some time out, and I don't feel as guilty about it as I used to. But I think that's one of the reasons that I still do my own programming, because I think if I had a coach, I would feel really bad if I had to skip a session, because I do like to be that perfectionistic, tick every box, sort of person. But when I'm doing it, it doesn't matter as much. I don't give myself a hard time if I skip something.
I can let myself down, but not someone else.
Exactly. Is that weird?
No, I actually think as the older I'm getting, that's why a lot of my running's now being combined with this mindfulness kind of movement. And a lot of it is related to that, and that we slow down. I mean, my mum's an art therapist, and a big thing for her when I went through a marriage breakdown many years ago, she was like, what are you running away from? Because I actually ran more while I was trying to deal with all that stuff that was going on, like a lot more. But I think it was my processing time, and I was just able to, let things tick over and work out what I wanted to do. And I think, and we don't spend enough time it's not even about slowing down. You can go faster but still be really present in that moment, rather than it being about getting somewhere. As we said before, it's more of the journey. It's more about the journey and taking those moments. And they only have to be a couple of minutes or whatever here and there too. They don't have to be, okay, this whole run, which is for 3 hours, needs to be just, smelling the roses. No, it doesn't have to be like that. It could just be a couple of minutes here and there where you notice something and you actually really notice it and take it in for a minute or two. And
definitely.
That can be enough.
Yeah, I think that is the key, being present. And that was the thing, one of the reasons why I wanted to launch myself into this backyard ultra thing, because I've always been so focused on the finish line. You're getting to the finish line, you're counting down how many Ks you've got left or how much time you've got left. But in a race where you don't know where the finish line is or when it's coming, the only way to be is to enjoy the present moment and to stick with that, I think. So that was one of the lessons I was trying to get out of that race.
Now I'm thinking maybe that's not so crazy, this backyard. You're teaching me something. Thank you.
Anytime.
Why would people do that? No, I'm like, oh, maybe that's a good reason to do it. I love it. So more about your actual training. When you're training, do you run with other people? So you said you run with your partner sometimes?
Very rarely. His upper limit is 5Ks, so that's a very easy recovery run for me. I would love him to run more, and he has the capability to do it, but he's actually a sprinter, so 5Ks for him is like 35Ks for me. So no, I don't tend to run with other people. I did a bit in Darwin, but here I don't really know anyone else that runs, which is pretty sad. It's only a little town, so and I guess I go at weird times, because of my schedule.
Yeah.
I'm pretty spontaneous, and it could be early in the morning or late at night or in the middle of the day. It just wherever it works. So it's hard to work in with someone else, but
Do
that's
you
okay.
have motivation problems ever? Like motivating to get out the door? Or is it just, it's just so ingrained in you that there's this continual movement that
Yeah. So I have motivation problems with like other things like work and things, but I love exercising and sport so much that it doesn't feel like a chore. It's something that I want to do. It's like, I guess for some people, they want to watch TV or play a video game or something. I want to go and run. So that's what I do.
I love that. So
Yeah.
when you're running, is that one of the times you listen to your podcast, or are you like a naked runner? Someone said that to me the other day. I'm like, what are you talking about? You went naked running.
Naked runner. I definitely don't run naked, but
he was actually talking about he didn't have headphones.
Yeah. I would say I probably wear my headphones more often than not now. And I do listen to podcasts, but if I'm doing a speed run, I will listen to music instead because I find it easier to run to that faster beat rather than someone talking. Occasionally I'll run without headphones, especially if I'm running with my partner. And I think it is important to do that sometimes, just to hear the nature sounds and that sort of things. And it's more if you're either on a really long run and you need something to help you pass the time, or in a speed run to cover up your heavy breathings so you don't realize how hard you're going.
It's amazing how many people say that. I don't want to hear my heavy breathing. That's why I have headphones in.
But you've probably looked at the literature on this, and it is actually evidence-based that it reduces your rate of perceived exertion if you're listening to music.
Well, I did not know that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
True.
Did you know, talking about science and running and flipping all the way back to like study and stuff, that and being mindful that when we are running, the things that are happening in our brain, it looks very similar to what happens if you are meditating. The neural pathways are being created, very similar to what happens when you're meditating. So you would know that, you would plenty of times get into a state where it's just everything's flowing. I suppose that's another way to put it sometimes. So when that happens, our brains are happy.
Well, that explains why running feels so much like meditation.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating. I love it. I think more people should do it, obviously.
Oh, definitely.
We all think that. You talked earlier about injuries. So thinking about when you get injured, how do you deal with that in your head? Because obviously if it's an injury where you can't go for a run, for example, or whatever the sport is that you're reflecting on, because you've had a number now, an injury might have stopped you doing it for a little while. How do you deal with that?
With a lot of frustration, because it usually happens right in the lead up to an event, doesn't it? But I guess one of the reasons probably why I've maintained so many different sports is that I feel like there's always something I can do to stay a little bit fit when I can't do whatever it is I want to do. So I just try to work around it. Maybe it's even that you have to go water running, or you can only do a few things in the gym. But after you get over the initial frustration, you have to sort of look at it as though, what is this teaching me, this injury? Did I go too hard? Did I do something wrong? What can I learn from this? And what can I work on in the meantime that might make me stronger in another way, or stronger so that I don't have this injury again?
Yeah, I love that. That's like somebody who's been studying a lot and has had to think a lot about what's going on.
Or who's just had a lot of setbacks and had to get over them in some way.
Oh, I love that response though. When do you think you would have called yourself a runner?
I still don't call myself a runner.
Can you believe that? You were going to say that. I did know that I had this inkling to say that.
Yeah,
that's
funny. I don't know. I think I have this perception that a runner is either someone who only does running or someone who's a professional runner. Like I would call myself a dietitian, and Jess Stenson, she's a runner because that's what she does for a job. That's her profession. But yeah, even though I run, I don't see myself as a runner.
And so do you think, can you perceive a time in the future where you would see yourself as a runner?
Yeah, possibly. If I do get to where I'm hoping to go with ultra running, I think I will have no choice but to call myself a runner.
Damn.
I don't know. I could still be just a person that runs.
Yeah. And so how long do you think you'll run for in your life? What's your vision for that? I don't mean competing or, whatever, just running or.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I'm able to. And I've always thought that I couldn't live without running. But then in those periods of my life where I have gone away from running, where I was just doing cycling, I never thought I'd be able to do that. But I went for years without running at all. So, if I was forced to stop running, I know, sacrilege, isn't it? I know that I would be able to deal with it. But if nothing happens to me to stop me running, I'll run until I'm not physically able to anymore.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
What do you think drives you? What do you think it is that pushes you to do what you do?
I don't really know, which is strange. You'd think you'd have to know in order to push yourself into the weird and wonderful events that I do. But I don't know. I think I have a bit of a perfectionist streak in me. And I've just always, I guess, been an achiever, like always being rewarded for achieving things in sailing as a young person and academically and all those sorts of things. And I think you get, I don't know, you get indoctrinated into that good feeling of being rewarded, whether it's by an award or praise or whatever, the sense of achievement from being first or whatever it is. So you get kind of hooked on that and you just have to keep experiencing it.
This is maybe, now it sounds like I'm psychoanalyzing you instead of me.
Go ahead.
Which is quite unusual for this podcast. It's usually all about me. So a lot of that's extrinsic, so it's outside of you. When is it enough for you? Like, when do you pat yourself on the back and say, I've done an amazing job? Or like a lot of things you've described, or when other people have, or other, you've won a race, or you've done well at school, or, and other people have recognized that, which was all awesome. And we all do that, but it's all very that too. But sometimes it's interesting to look at, what do we need and when do we pat ourselves on the back about?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not enough. I'd say most of us don't really congratulate ourselves enough on the small wins. I think when you've pushed yourself as hard as you can and you've done the best job that you can, that's all you can do. And I'm happy with that. But I guess the reason I keep entering these longer and longer and harder events is because I haven't really found the limit of where I can push myself to now. And I thought that a backyard ultra was a guaranteed way to discover that. Turns out Mother Nature had other ideas, but I think that's where I will find the limit. And I'm looking forward to really finding out what that feels like.
I once heard a life coach say, one of her goals was just to be an example of what's possible. And I thought that was a really nice way to describe what some of us who tend to strive for things, we're not always doing it just for us. It's kind of like an external thing as well. It's kind of hard to explain, but that kind of, wanting to push your body, for example, and see what you can achieve is a reason to drive for that in itself.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I had a guy who came up from Adelaide to support me in the Backyard Ultra as, part of my ground crew. I didn't know him very well. I met him because I was volunteering at one of these events in Adelaide a few months ago, and I was the tail bike rider. So I was a bit of safety, and I was following around the last runner to make sure, because it was in a public park, and make sure they were safe. And so I got chatting to this guy because he was running last for a few laps, and we got to know each other's life stories and whatever, and he volunteered to come and help me with my event. Wow. And then afterwards he sent me this beautiful message, and he said that he would really take a lot away from the experience of volunteering with me, and that he said that I was an inspirational person that would inspire lots of other people to reach their best or whatever. And I thought, I've never ever thought of myself as an inspiration. To be honest, I think of myself and my sporting achievements as a bit of a selfish pursuit in a way, because it's all about me. But if that is something that I can do by pushing myself, is to inspire other people, then 100%, that's what I'm in for. That's an awesome thing to give to the sport.
I think that's awesome. I love that. And, you know, I've been thinking a bit about that word selfish as well over the last little while. And it's only like our culture that has developed a thing about it being a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Like, you think about it, if we didn't look after ourselves, even when you're in the plane, it's an analogous when you're in the plane and they say, if you've got a young person, put the thing on the gas mask or the oxygen mask on your face first before you, because it's, you know, and it can be a bit like that if you think about it like that, isn't it? We've got to look after ourselves before you can help others. And so if you can be an example and a light, if you want to show the way, then it's really cool. I love that. That can be a purpose all on its own without think of it from the negative perspective of what we think of as selfish. It's not.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, I like it. Thank you. That makes me feel better about pursuing my goals.
Well, I love it. I just think, and you know, being an example of what's possible can work in any endeavor that you do too. Like that, where you think you're, you know, chasing it for your own selfish things, but actually the reality is, if you can achieve that and not many other people have before, then you're showing other people the way, if you like. So being an example of what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. I hope I can have that effect on people.
Well, that's why you're on here, young lady, because you have that effect on me. I think you're amazing. You just
thank you.
Always driving and always pushing forward. You just make me tired.
Well, maybe I should take some of your meditative advice on board and slow myself down a bit.
Even while you're running. That's right. You could do it while you're running. It's amazing what you could do while you're running.
It's true. That is true.
Let me see. Now, I ask lots of people, and again, purely for personal reasons, how many pairs of shoes do you run with?
Well, I took 6. I took 6 to Backyard Ultra. But 2 of them are probably pairs of shoes that are a bit past their best. But because I knew it was going to be raining, I thought it's better to have dry shoes than, you know, even dry shoes that are old. But there's probably 4 pairs that I'm rotating through. Yeah.
Okay. So I've recently graduated from 1 pair of shoes to 2. So
wow. Don't you need road and trail shoes?
Well, I've got like a pair now that are hybrid.
Okay. Hybrid shoes. Okay. I can see those.
I want now a pair that are electric and
well, it can't be far away. We've got carbon sole shoes. The next thing will be battery power shoes.
That's it. I'll just be running. No, that doesn't sound like fun. Or maybe the uphill bits, some of the uphills. Anyway, we'll work on that. If you think about your running, Holly, how do you think it's improved your life? So if you hadn't run in particular, how would your life be?
Oh, it'd be totally different. I think I'd be such a different person. I think you're right. It's that mental health aspect of it. I think I'd be a very grumpy person, a very irritable, snappy person if I didn't have running. And I just wouldn't feel as strong or as confident in myself. Like it's amazing what running does for your self-esteem, and just being fit, I guess, increases your self-efficacy, or like you're feeling that you can do anything, I guess.
I love that. Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. That I can do anything because I run.
Yeah,
wish it was true, but I feel like it is.
Yeah.
Kind of good. What would be your number one favorite thing about running?
Probably being out in nature and just the scenery that you see and the places that you get to go that you would never go if you didn't run.
Yeah. I love that too. I love exploring. Like, you know, there's a kind of exploring runs. That running tourism thing, I think it's got it's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Getting around like that. So is there anything about running that you think we should talk about before we wrap up that we maybe haven't covered?
I think we've covered quite a lot, haven't we?
Little bits and pieces.
Yeah. No, there's nothing that comes to mind. I think we've really hit on all the major aspects of running.
All of the important bits and pieces. Do you have you have some social media whatevers that people follow you when you're being an athlete? As opposed to dietetics.
I do. Yeah, I'm not particularly good at social media. As I said to you before, I don't love just having my face buried in my phone, but my partner does a pretty good job of keeping up the socials when I'm doing an event. So recently I've been using my work Instagram account, which is at MBB Health Coaching, because I'm trying to raise the profile of my business. So
good idea.
Yeah, and then I've got my personal Instagram, which is at Holly Rebecca, but nothing much goes on there. So my work one, which is also a Facebook page, Mind Body Goal Health Coaching, is probably the place to see what I'm up to.
All right, because I'll put those on the on your with the podcast on the
thank you, awesome.
Then people can go check out what you're up to, and
yeah,
when
I definitely need a bit of a boost of followers.
when you sign up for that next ultra, especially backyard ultra, and get lots of people cheering for you to tick off many more 6.7K laps.
That would be great. I think my partner had a Facebook group going with, our close friends and family while I was running, and he was updating them every so often. And when I'd come into the tent in between laps, he'd say, oh, such and such says this, and this person says this, and here's a video of your niece doing this, and here's somebody's dog sleeping on the bed. And it was just so great. Like it was, I just felt the love from everyone, and it really helped keep me going. So I think people might underrate their support that they might offer in an event like that, but actually goes a really long way.
Oh, I love that. All right, well, we'll put that up there and we'll see what can happen the next time.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we wrap up, if someone comes to you and says, Holly, I want to start running, what would you suggest they do?
Just start. I would say just do what you can. Don't put any expectations on yourself. People think they have to go out and run for an hour, or there's no point in going out. Wrong. You can go out and run for 5 minutes, or you can walk for a minute and then run for a minute and then walk for a minute. And you can start with 3 minutes. Like, that doesn't matter, as long as you start somewhere and you be consistent and you keep on going. And I think just doing what you want to do as opposed to what you think you should do or someone else says you should do, because you have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you won't keep going with it. And it's when you put expectations on it, like I should go for an hour, and you don't enjoy that, well, that's when it's going to collapse. So I think just do what you enjoy and start where you are and be consistent.
I love it. Yes. Perfect. Well, Holly, it has been awesome to reconnect with you personally. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that everyone else will as well, because you are an inspiration. Not to mention, as I said about 4 times now, make me feel tired with how much that you managed to achieve in a day. It's amazing. Such a busy person, and ticking off lots of goals. And it's awesome to see what you're doing. So well done, you, and thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Michelle. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. I'd love to talk to you about your running journey. So send me a message on Facebook or on the website, and let's do it. For a bunch of resources on mindful running that will help you get and stay mentally and physically fit, head over to the website fitmindfitbody.co, and I'll see you there. Plus, I'll be back here in your podcast player a few times a week. Hit subscribe now so that you don't miss an episode. And before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a review. It'll help more people to find the podcast and get inspired to start running. I'll see you soon. Bye.